Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Jockers Functional Nutrition Podcast, where we believe your body was designed to heal itself. And we're here to equip you with the resources and the strategies so you can turn on your inner healing potential. And I'm excited about today's interview. I've got a good friend of mine. He's a friend and a client, and he's an actor. So he's got a busy lifestyle and really a great health story. And so this is Cameron Mathison. And Cameron, we met just online through messaging back and forth with Instagram. I know he'd been following a lot of my YouTube videos, and he actually is on the Hallmark Channel. He's a host of Home and Family, a really popular show on the Hallmark Channel. He also does Entertainment Tonight as well, another popular show. He's been on Dancing with the Stars, right? And so,
yes.
Yeah, so that's a really popular one. Good Morning America as well. So you've probably, if you've turned on your TV in the last 20 years, you've probably seen Cameron at some point. I think was your most popular, your most famous role on All My Children. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was on All My Children for like 14 years playing Ryan Lavery. So
Yep.
It sort of comes with me no matter what. And that was a long time ago now. I don't even know, almost 10 years ago maybe.
Yep.
But it still seems to come up almost more than anything, which is very sweet. It's near and dear to my heart, that role. So.
Absolutely. And you were Emmy nominated for that. Is that correct?
I was a couple times. Yep.
I know when we first started connecting, I was like, he just looks really familiar. Like I've seen him. I had never, I haven't had cable or anything like that and really watched much TV in the last 20 years or so. So I was like, where have I seen him before? But, at some point, Hallmark movies, you've been on all these different Hallmark movies, great movies. And so you make your way around, real recognizable face, and truly one of the nicest guys that I have ever met. I really love working with him as a client. And so absolutely. So Cameron, let's talk about your story and how you got involved with health and how you got started with acting.
Well, I'll rewind a little bit. I grew up in Canada, and I was very strong in math and sciences, so I went into engineering school, a school in Canada called McGill University, and I studied engineering, but my roommate was an actor. One of my best friends still is. And I used to kind of run lines with him. We practice scenes with him. We call it running lines. And then one summer, I used to work for my professors in between years, in the summertime. And one summer, I couldn't get a job with one of my professors, and it just was tough. And so I was out somewhere, and somebody said, well, you should try modeling. And I was like, okay. And I went out and I went to an agency, and that led into a little mini modeling experience, which led into commercials. And then when I started doing commercials, I really got that acting bug. I finished up my engineering degree, and then I started studying acting in Toronto first and booking stuff there. But then when I was living in Toronto, I booked All My Children, and I moved to New York for that role. So that was the big life-changing experience. Now, all through that, it's interesting because at that time, I never really knew how to eat or, I was an athletic guy. I played college basketball at McGill, and I was pretty fit. But when I look back at my diet, it just was not right for me at all. It wasn't really working. I was always lethargic, and I used to have like candy bars before practices to get energy. Just trying to do whatever I could do. But it was before I booked a role called, it was in the movie called 54 with Ryan Phillippe, Ned Campbell, Mike Myers. It was about Studio 54 in New York. And I had to be the shirtless bartender. And I was in decent shape, but not lean and just kind of athletic, just normal. And the director said, listen, these bartenders were, they did a lot of things that made them very lean. They weren't super healthy guys. And so I need you to lean out. And I was like, okay. So at that point, I did a little research, and I discovered the Atkins diet. And it was like, this is back in
like late 90s,
1996 maybe.
Yeah, that was very early stages for that. Yeah.
And I had never cut out carbohydrates on any level. And I don't really have any this or that to say about the Atkins diet, but I will say that once I started cutting out carbohydrates, I probably was not doing it in the healthiest way, but I got very, very lean. I had way more energy. I'd always had like an abdominal bloat to me that went away, and so that was my first sort of phase into low carb. That's sort of when my diet started to shift, and I went to All My Children. And off and on through the years would keep coming back to what I would call just eating low carbohydrate the best I could, not understanding the function really of increasing healthy fats in there at the same time, right? So I wasn't really all that educated, but I could still see so much benefit to it. And so through my careers, I did that. And then, you want me to kind of get into my recent health journey that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Let's just go through the evolution of it. I mean, the reality is most people didn't know what they were doing back in the 90s,
Yeah.
and now we've got more and more information coming out and biohacking and all kinds of stuff like that. And you've really jumped into this. But yeah, I'd love to hear kind of your whole evolution, your whole story with it.
It's a good point, because back at that time, this is when I met my now wife, and Vanessa, and I was aesthetically in very good form. But she said, "You're the unhealthiest, healthy-looking person I've ever met." To your point, like I was doing things, at the time, ephedra was legal. It was in things like hydroxycut and stuff. I was just doing whatever I had to do to create this aesthetic form because of being on TV and on the roll, and all my children, my shirt was off all the time or whatever. So I was like, I felt this pressure. I established this kind of bar.
Yeah.
Of what I had to look aesthetically, and I was doing all sorts of unhealthy ways to.
That's really interesting, because there's a lot of talk in the media about women and the pressure they have, right? Especially models, and your wife is a model, and so the pressure they've had to have a certain physique, and most people don't think about the men as well, like you, and the things that sometimes a lot of times men will do in order to have that physique as well.
Yeah, I could totally. I mean, that definitely. I think it's a unique set of circumstances that I was in where I kind of felt that pressure, but I did get myself into that position where, especially being in the public eye at the time, all my children was very popular. My character, was pretty popular out there. And I would do these appearances in the malls and sign autographs and stuff, which I loved. But for somehow this pattern, like I had nothing to do with it. The pattern started where I would start kind of taking my shirt off and flexing in front of the crowds. And that became kind of what I was more or less known for. And I'm not taking myself too serious. I love that people got a kick out of it, and I was doing it just for fun and stuff. But after a while, I was like, oh man, what have I done here? Like, this is, I gotta keep it up. So that was really aesthetically based. Now, through the years, I got a little bit older, had kids, and my diet would definitely be more all over the place. We were always pretty, getting good quality foods and things, but I wasn't necessarily eating for my body. I love what you said when you started saying that our bodies were designed to heal itself or something like that. Yeah. Like I was not thinking in that realm. I wasn't eating for my body in a way that I could tell was best for my body. Just healthy this or that, what I'd read was healthy, right? Yep. Wasn't great for me.
Like the average 20, early 30-year-old, right? It's typically not until somebody reaches mid 30s, 40s that they start to, think through, hey, wow, I need to really start taking care of my body.
That's exactly right. And I was managing to kind of keep aesthetically pretty good, but not feeling great. Low energy, definitely abdominal issues, digestion issues that would manifest in different ways, but lots of like distension, like a lower abdomen distension, kind of almost small intestine and stomach, and it was it just was sort of plaguing me. I just kind of managed it, and I just assumed it was my body type and whatever you're going to do, like I'm getting older or whatever. But it led me, because I a few times, so let's see now, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, it led me to really try to figure it out a couple of times. And a big piece of the puzzle I have to mention here is that I started developing acid reflux like maybe 15 years ago. And I went to, kind of like the best doctors that I had access to in LA and New York to help me out with that, gastroenterologists, I believe. And they would prescribe me antacids, things like Nexium and Prevacid. And I went through different ones through the years. I was on those acid blocking medications for, really nonstop for at least 10 years, maybe a little longer. And it got to the point where I started needing more. I started needing one in the morning, one at night. So being on this medication that in my mind was supposed to help me, with my medical issue. And yet over time, the symptoms of my medical issue were getting worse. It didn't logically make sense to me. I was like, I don't understand. If I'm taking medication to help me, why is everything getting worse? Like my distension was worse. My acid reflux I couldn't go a few hours. Well, that's not true. I couldn't go a half a day without taking an anti-acid medication. Right? So I was really kind of dependent on this. And it didn't make sense to me at all. So I started doing, like you said, that's when it really began, my going online and doing my own research and finding this huge community, specifically now with acid reflux, where they were saying that you can do it with diet and you can fix it with diet. And it's actually not too much acid in your stomach, but in a way it's too little too little acid, which allows the bacteria and things to ferment in your stomach, creating the gas, which blows open the esophageal valve, letting the acid up. Something along those lines. That's a pretty rough example.
Yeah. I'll jump in there and explain that to the listener, and then we'll go right back to your story. So normally your stomach acid at rest is roughly around 3 to 3.5 pH. And for reference, water is neutral at 7.0 pH. And if anybody remembers back to chemistry class, we know it's a really big jump to go from 7 to 3.0, somewhere in that range. And then when we eat meat, right, especially meat, or really protein in general, but particularly meat, we need to drop that acid down to around 1.5 to 2.2. So that's really energy demanding for our body to get the acid from 3 to 3.5 down to 1.5 to 2.2 in that range. And so we've got to produce enough stomach acid in order to do that. If we don't, food can just sit in our stomach and start to rot and ferment, like you were talking about, and it slows the emptying from the stomach into the small intestine. And so when you take an antacid, right? So for a lot of people, they just naturally have low stomach acid. And you know what's interesting, Cameron, is people with blue eyes. I was talking to a naturopath about this, and this has been in naturopathic medicine. They've talked about this for hundreds of years now. People with blue eyes are a lot higher rate of low stomach acid, right? So you've got blue eyes, I've got blue eyes, my wife does, right? And so all of us, and I take HCl, right? My wife does as well. Taking that extra stomach acid really, really helps. And so, but anyways, basically, if we don't get enough stomach acid, food is just going to sit there and start to rot and putrefy, right? And then that gas is going to end up causing acid to jump up into the esophagus. And the esophagus can't handle even 3 to 3.5 pH, right? That's too much, and it'll start to damage that tissue. So that's where supplementing with something like a betaine HCl can really help, or doing apple cider vinegar in water, or chewing on some bitters like fennel seed or ginger, right? So just even taking a little bit of ginger root, like an inch of ginger root, and chewing on that before a meal can help start to get your stomach acid produced, right? It actually activates part of your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, which turns on the digestive juices. So that can really help. Taking some deep breaths before we eat can really help with turning on the digestive juices. And of course, you had a busy job, and we all grew up in the era of fast food, meaning not just the quality of food, but like eating fast, right? Just eating on the go, right? Yeah. So you're not going to be able to produce the digestive juices you need. And there's so many people out there. I mean, millions of people out there that are suffering with acid reflux that are not being treated properly. They're being given proton pump inhibitors, which stop the body's ability to produce acid. So they make it even worse, right? They never actually get rid of the underlying root cause. And so that's the big issue there. And that's how you were being treated.
And that makes perfect sense, because it was getting worse, right? So that's exactly, I remember going to my doctor. So once I did my own little research, and then I went to my gastroenterologist, who's, I think he's one of the best in the Los Angeles area, who knows, and I said to him, so what do you think about, adjusting my diet and doing it that way? And he said, let me get this right. Trying to heal acid reflux with diet alone is like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. Mm. And I was like, oh man, I was so gut punched. I remember that. Wow. But so I went along another, who knows how long on the pills. Because after he told me that, he's the authority. But eventually I did. It's funny you mentioned the ginger. I cut out all my, Prevacid or Nexium.
Yep.
And I started supplementing as per I was reading with HCl. And I would kind of do that little test to see how much I used. So I needed a lot of HCl before I even felt any kind of acidity. So it was several pills. And I was doing, lemon juice, lemon water. I was doing ginger, making my own ginger tea, really strong ginger tea on the stove, but also chewing on it and doing things like that. Within 3 days of doing that, I had no acid reflux.
Yeah.
So I'd been on that medication for like 11 years.
Yep.
And so I don't know what exactly had been done to my stomach, but I'm sure it wasn't great. Finally kind of sort of corrected that. And
did you change your diet as well? Was there anything that you were eating that you saw was contributing? Because a lot of people also notice something like possibly gluten, right? Eating gluten or dairy or something like that. They oftentimes a food sensitivity can also trigger acid reflux as well.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Yeah, I went sort of to a low carbohydrate paleo diet. So at that time it was more sort of a, scaled low carb paleo was how I was eating, no processed foods, best quality I could find. Like you say, no gluten, no grains, all of that. And that made a big difference too. I'm sure it was all the pieces of the puzzle. But the symptoms went away remarkably quickly, I thought. But over the years after that, I still noticed issues with my body, with my gut and digestion, although my diet wasn't really all that perfect through that time either, but just to the point where it just didn't seem right. I knew in my heart that something wasn't right, and I thought there was something going on in my small intestines. And I kept asking my doctor at the time here in Pasadena for an MRI just to get a scan of my lower abdomen, because I was convinced that something was there. And this went on for a while, and he genuinely, and he didn't say no, but he was like, I really don't think you need it. Why don't we try this? And why don't we try that? And we tried different things, and nothing really helped almost at all, like supplements and diet adjustments. And so it turns out that eventually I did get the MRI, and it was from that MRI that he was correct. My small intestines, my stomach looked okay, but they found a tumor on my right kidney. I had kidney cancer, renal cell carcinoma, and likely the symptoms that I was experiencing weren't directly related to the situation. But at my heart, I still knew. I mean, there was things like my white blood cell count was low, really low, when it shouldn't be, and then it came up, and there were just other signs and tests that I would be doing that didn't make sense to me. So I kind of persisted, got the MRI, kind of in a sense in my mind anyway, kind of fought for it, got it. Found out it was cancer, had surgery, no chemo, no radiation. This was when I met you.
Yeah.
I mean, literally within a week of my surgery is when you came on Home and Family.
Yeah. Yeah, we had been talking well before, and we scheduled the time for me to come on Home and Family. And then you found out, I think it was like a month or so before, because this was like 3 or 4 months before that when we scheduled it.
That's
and
right.
Then you found out about a month before the show aired that you had the cancer. And then, of course, you got the surgery, right? And unfortunately, you weren't able to make it on the show, but I came over to your place afterwards.
Yeah, it was so kind of you and Angela to come over. For everybody watching this, my co-host on Home and Family is a fantastic woman named Debbie Matenopoulos.
Yeah.
And she told Dr. Jockers, she said, "You're like his Santa Claus." Like that's how I all of the YouTube videos and the books and the things I've read about you. I can't get enough of it all, and it's helped me so much. And so she told you that you're like my Santa Claus, which I love.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yep. And Debbie is great. I really enjoy doing the show with her. So I was going to say, so you got the surgery done, right? And then how was that recovery process?
In the grand scheme of things, it went, really, really well. It was a lot slower than I thought. Yeah. I thought I was going to be able to recover and be on the show and interview. You remember that?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It was like a week later, and everybody's like, I don't think that's going to happen. But yes, the recovery, the immediate recovery was slow. Of course, it was, major surgery, but I feel so much better. Now, with that said, for whatever reason, I guess maybe part of my mind felt like, I'm so careful about the way I eat, and I still got cancer. So, maybe I don't need to stick, to the strict diet that I'm known for, because of that. It still didn't work very well. But the doctors, so, people say the doctors flat out told me that it's likely the fact that I was so careful with the way I eat, maybe not all the time, but I was so careful about the way I eat that it likely prevented it. Low sugar, low carbohydrate prevented the cancer from growing and spreading. So it was contained in my kidney, it didn't get into my lymph nodes, it didn't get into my lungs, things that it can typically go to. And it was likely growing slowly for around 8 years, I think, approximately.
Yeah.
So my healthy lifestyle did really, in a sense, save my life in many ways. And even though after the surgery, I kind of was still eating not great for my body. And that's when we checked in, and you kept trying to encourage me and give me ideas and things the way to follow, until finally in the last really 2 months, I've been back on track, super low carbohydrate keto, like,
Yep.
Like very, very low. And I feel almost like I'm in my 20s again. So much energy. My body fat, I've gotten leaner, but one of my goals is not to kind of lose size because I'm on camera. I don't want to get all, I don't know. I always feel like super low carbohydrate, it forces you to get super lean. And I'm sure for some people you can adjust it so that if that is your goal to lose a lot of weight, I'm sure that's a good way to do it. For me, that's not my goal. And I was able to go super low carbohydrate the last 2 months, increase my strength, and go down in body fat. And my weight, according to the scale, is around the same, which is shocking to me. So, but most importantly, feel great. My digestion is fantastic. I'm doing the intermittent fasting as well, and just so many benefits. I'm not even, but more mental clarity, better sleep. I wake up feeling more energetic. I'm still probably drinking a little bit too much black coffee, but I'm working on that.
Yeah. And I know when we ran labs too, we also saw a high level of toxins, right? So environmental toxins we found in very, very high levels in your system. And so, you're as fit a person, like you just look like you're super healthy, obviously look amazing. And you're what, in your early 50s now, right?
Yeah. 50,
look absolutely amazing. Like, best looking early 50-year-old man you're going to find. But yet you had cancer. And this is something that we all need to realize, is that we're being exposed to toxins on a regular basis. And, you obviously were fit, exercising regularly. And for, the last however many years you've been eating healthy, but you had this cumulative toxic exposure. And so that was certainly a factor. I know we did a lot of work on detox to help basically get a lot of this stuff out of the system. I think that's obviously played a big role. And then also, I know you were eating, even though you're eating really healthy, a lot of people don't realize this, that the average person is actually eating something like 6 to 10 meals a day. And they don't think about it because they think a meal is actually sitting down and eating something, right? But if you take a drink of kombucha, okay, you're getting like 20 calories or something like that, enough to kind of shock your insulin and increase your insulin levels. And so I know we had talked about, hey, let's basically compress that eating window, and then, don't constantly snack throughout the day. You want to talk about that?
Well, I remember, like, it's amazing because you go through, as let's say client here in this case, I'm going through everything and you've been working with me, and I just conveniently left out the detail that I literally am the world's biggest snacker. So I'm telling you what I'm eating and what I'm not eating, and that was all accurate and true.
And it was all healthy foods. You were eating really healthy foods, but it wasn't like compressed times. And that's important, because if you're constantly eating, like you're talking about snacking, you're constantly increasing insulin, and insulin tells the body to grow, right? And so we get too much signal to grow, that can trigger cancer, right? And so go ahead, go back to what you were saying.
See, that's fascinating to me. When you told me that, it was the ultimate best motivation for me, probably for a lot of people, to not snack. It was, and it wasn't even necessarily that I was hungry. It become my whole life. I mean, childhood. My whole life is just a behavior. It's just when I have, when I'm walking around, if I'm in the kitchen, it's like Pavlov's dogs. I'm in the kitchen, I just check the pantry and just have some macadamia nuts or some seaweed or whatever it is. Like, it was good stuff. But my wife, and it's just, you got to listen to your partners, everybody, to your wives, your girlfriends, because she has been saying to me for years and years, she's like, you've got to stop snacking. And it's not because I was overweight, but just to give my digestion a break. I mean, here's a guy with digestive issues, clearly. And I wasn't taking a break other than my overnight fast window, which at the time was about 16 hours every day. Now I've gotten to 18 hours, pretty close, every day, 17 to 18 hours. And then I don't eat again until my second meal. So 2 meals a day, as per your suggestion. I never thought that I could go through the day without snacking, and I have no desire to now. And I don't know what's happening. I don't know how it's possible, but I'm so grateful because it's true. It was almost like a chain. It was almost like I was trapped in this habit. And I had to pack snacks with me all the time. It was like, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I went through that phase as well back when I was a personal trainer back in my early 20s. I thought, if I don't have a protein shake before I go to bed, and then, like a big bowl of cereal or something like that I had in the morning, I would lose muscle, right? I kept thinking that. But what happens when we continually suppress or continually spike insulin, it actually limits our strength and our healing potential. So by compressing your eating window, like you're doing now, 2 meals a day, okay, and then your body responds really well on a very low carb keto diet. So he's doing more of a carnivore approach, and we'll talk about that just in a minute. And you had cycled through different things. I know like 6 months ago we were talking and you were like, yeah, I'm doing plant-based. I'm doing like a week. You're like, I feel amazing, but I have constant gas and I'm bloated all the time. But other than that, my energy feels great, right? You were telling me that.
Yeah, that little detail.
Yeah, exactly. But just, taking out the snacking and really compressing, and it's not about eating less. It's just about eating less often, right? So compressing that eating window plays a big role with improving insulin sensitivity. And then when you go longer periods of time without food, your body boosts up growth hormone. And growth hormone is really good for your immune system, right? It really strengthens your immune system, good for bone density, good for lean body tissue, burning fat, building muscle. It's kind of your quintessential anti-aging hormone, right? So you get a great improvement there. You also stimulate autophagy, where the body starts to break down and eat older damaged cells. So even if you're on a ketogenic diet, but you're eating every 3 or 4 hours, you are not going to stimulate autophagy, because even if you just take a spoonful of butter, you're still going to get some level of insulin release and enough to stop the body's own self-healing process. This is why it's important to compress that eating window. I recommend 2 to maybe 3 meals a day. Most men can get away with 2. Sometimes women, we've got to do 3, but snacking on a regular basis, not a good idea.
It's just so incredibly helpful. And like I said, this is really the first time in my whole life that I can remember where I have a snack. Can I ask you a quick question about, you mentioned taking a spoonful of butter. So during my fast, maybe this is like an off-camera question, but I'm going to ask it on camera anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, do you consider MCT oil, the CA MCT oil, do you consider that breaking the fast?
That's a really good question. So technically it does break a fast. However, because it's so ketogenic, you get little to no insulin release. So if you're going to do something, C8 MCT oil is what you want to do, because it basically just turns right into ketones. What most people experience when they do a little bit of C8 MCT oil is they just actually the fasting part becomes easier. They're able to extend their fast longer. They feel more mentally clear, more productive during the fast. So I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. But if you were to do a typical bulletproof coffee where you put in the butter, butter will, even though it's just plain fat, because it's a longer chain fat, it takes longer to digest. It's not quite as quick to turn into ketones. You will get more of an insulin release, which can inhibit that autophagy.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't always do it, but sometimes I.
Yeah. You can experiment, see how you feel, doing that versus not doing it. See if it's making a difference for you.
At the same time, the exogenous ketones are a good thing to do during a fast too, and that doesn't technically spike the insulin either.
Correct. I mean, if it's just straight exogenous ketones, not a bad idea either. What I'd like to do is get the body, and it depends on the individual. So if you're having a relaxed morning, I would just do the fast. But if you've got to really perform, that morning and you're not quite sure if, you're going to be able to perform at your best if you're fasting, then take some exogenous ketones or C8 MCT oil. Does that make
Great.
sense?
Yeah, perfect. That's correct. So don't get in the habit of it, but just use it if you feel like you might need it. Great.
Exactly. Because it can provide that performance benefit, whether it inhibits autophagy, because both of those have some level of calories in them, there's going to be some compromise when it comes to autophagy, so you got to weigh it out. Do I get enough performance benefits, from this? Is it really moving the needle for me? Or is it something I can, I'm not really noticing the benefit from, and I don't really need to use it, so I get the full benefits of the autophagy.
Nice.
What I find is that
for me, it's a pretty moderate increase in benefit. It's not night and day for me at all.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to measure out, right? Because and that's really where I want to go next. Also, is let's talk about kind of your normal schedule. Now, right now, as we're doing this interview, we're quarantined, right? And so this interview will be coming out in a few months. But right now, it's what, April 23rd or something like that. And so we're all quarantined at this point, and so your schedule's a little bit different. You don't have your home and family is not showing right now. But what's your normal schedule like? Just so, because a lot of people are interested in what that looks like for an actor.
So since I've started in the hosting world and co-hosting Home and Family. So Home and Family is on Hallmark Channel 2 hours every day, Monday to Friday, and we shoot that Monday to Friday. Now, when I go off and I do Hallmark movies, I'll take a little leave of absence from Home and Family, and I'll go and do the Hallmark movies like on location somewhere. But basically, my daily schedule, and it's so, like, I feel so grateful to be in this entertainment industry and to have like somewhat of a regular schedule. It's pretty cool. I'll wake up Monday to Friday. I'll get up early, early for me, around 5 a.m., and I'll sort of have my quiet time in the morning. So I do a little meditation, and I do like sort of a form of yoga, get the body moving a little bit, and I'll have some black coffee. That's where that comes in. And obviously, the first thing I do is I have a big old glass of water, and then so as that happens, so I'll spend. People in the house don't usually wake up till 6:30 or so, maybe even 6:45, and so I'll have a good long time in the morning to myself where I can do my kind of spiritual practice, or some of it, and enjoy my alone time and get ready for the day too. I read my scripts and get ready for the day as well. My scripts being on our show, we have 11 kind of what we call segments, or 11 sections of the show. That could be interviews with guests like Dr. Jockers. We could be in the kitchen making food. We do 3 kitchen segments, recipe segments. We have DIYs, we have crafts, things like that. So I prepare for the day with different interviews and things like that. And then I leave for work, usually around 7:45, 8. I get to work and we do on the show. But as soon as you get out of the car, as soon as you arrive, it's on Universal Lot. So if you guys ever been to Los Angeles and you've been to the Universal Studios, that's like kind of like obviously the amusement park. Down the hill is the real Universal Studios lot. You can even take a tour to see the different stages and things like that. That's where our stage is. It's actually a house that it looks like a house, but it's designed to be a studio. And as soon as I get out of the car at Home and Family, it's on. So it's a very interesting dynamic that I don't totally understand the chemistry, how it affects the body, but you're really like, you're like adrenally, you're focused. From the moment you get out, we got the script to read, we start tweaking, we start getting hair and makeup, going through wardrobe. People are coming at you from all directions. Remember, 11 segments, if not more, every day, where the producers are tweaking and coming to you and asking as you're trying to get ready. And then, all of this happens right away at 8:30. We start shooting usually 10, 10:30, sometimes as late as 11. That's always preset, though, so we know what time we start shooting. And once we start shooting, then you're really focused on. The way I describe it is, imagine having to present in front of a huge audience, like thousands of people every day, and you have to be the expert and you have to know everything that you're presenting. And the presentation is going to be between 3 and 4 hours every day, and you get the information for that presentation at 8:30 that morning.
Yeah,
you got to start at 8:30 to get ready to be on and to engage and to have everybody kind of listening, and you have to know your stuff. And that happens every single day. Like I hear people that say, I had a presentation today. Oh, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, yeah, it's sort of how we roll each and every day. Now, with that said, as you kind of get in a rhythm, there's some aspects where we can take a little breather, and there's some things that come more naturally to others. There's some where you really have to mentally focus and be on. Usually the interviews, somebody's making the effort to come on the show. I really want to know my stuff. I want to be prepared. I want to know my questions. And I want to know as much research as I can. So that takes a lot more of like that being on. Whereas if I'm in a segment with one of what we call our family members, our supporting family members that come in with DIYs or crafts, I can kind of cruise along. I got to know what we're doing. I got to know what happens. But at the same time, they're driving it. So it's a little bit easier on the mind. But I think it's pretty stressful on my system, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, you're a mental athlete. Absolutely. Like it's like, going in and you're playing a soccer match or a basketball match. You're not moving your body in the same way physically, but mentally you've got to be really quick to react. You've got to really know your stuff. You got to, performances and just public speaking in general. I know you don't really have an issue with public speaking, but for a lot of people that alone is one of the largest fears in our society. And then, you're constantly doing different scenes. So you got to really be sharp, and you don't have a whole lot of time to take in information and process it and respond to it. So,
it's a good mental challenge. It's for sure.
Yeah.
And people ask me what's easier, doing, acting or doing a show like that. And it's not even close. Like it's not even remotely close. So even on a soap opera, the show would shoot 120 pages a day. But maybe let's say an average day would be about 20 pages of dialogue. Sometimes, more than that, sometimes less than that. But even that is like a spa treatment compared to what we do every day at Home and Family. But doing the Hallmark movies, you're doing 8 or 9 pages a day, and you're on set for 15 hours, and it's long days. But it has a very, very different effect on my body for sure. Like it's you're trying to relax into a character. You're trying to be. You don't have to be on and amped and engaged.
Right,
you're trying to be. You're just like, it's like in a sense, a version of yourself, which requires a lot less kind of adrenal focus.
Right.
And for me, that is far less taxing. I don't know about easier or harder, but less taxing for sure.
Yeah. And what makes Home and Family so good is that you guys are on. Right. You and Debbie are on, like you guys bring energy, and that's what attracts everybody to it. So, so you've got, that you can't have a day off, right? From that perspective, when the show goes on, you got to be on and really nailing your stuff.
They know it when you don't have it on. Like, we're kind of live to tape, but if we really sort of mess up, they'll stop down and start again. But they can tell when we're a little out of it, and everybody's great. And the good thing about this, I've been on sets where that pressure of messing up, and then you start sweating, and then everybody's staring at you. Working at Hallmark it's one of I think it's my favorite job I've ever had in my whole life, because it's the most authentic to who I am as a person. I mean, all we do there, the whole channel, whether it's the movies or Home and Family, try to spread positivity, virtuous ideas and thoughts, and try to make people feel good and be happy. It's supposed to be like a real positive escape in our world. And, I love being part of that. So. Yeah,
that's so good. And then you had told me that you were doing entertainment tonight as well.
Yeah.
Right. Are you still doing that? You like occasionally do shows, or how does that work?
I was occasionally, whenever last we spoke, occasionally doing special interviews and stuff. So I was on ET for about 4 years as the weekend host, and also the weekend co-host, and also a regular correspondent Monday to Friday, like on the show every day. And that was also very draining in a different way. There's a lot of travel. Traveling all around the world to interview the biggest stars that you could ever think of on sets and doing movies, and sort of the cool factor of that show had the highest cool factor. Without a doubt, had the highest cool factor I've ever done. It was like, on paper, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that. Like it was pretty neat. With that said, there were some challenges that come with that, and that is being away from the family.
Yes.
Very, very difficult to eat the way I like to eat and to stay as active as I do. When with one airline, 1 year, I had 212,000 miles only on one airline.
Yeah.
In one 12-month period. That's a lot of travel. Like I'd go to New Zealand and then come back, have a day, and then go to London. Like it was a lot, but it was very, I got to meet a lot of my childhood heroes. And for instance, I had the new Han Solo movie came out, and I was interviewing the new Han Solo. And in that interview, we had arranged that Harrison Ford and Ron Howard would come in through the back and surprise the new Han Solo with the old Han Solo. And it's me, and this is happening in front of me. And, there's moments like that where you're like, I got goosebumps even thinking about it. Like it's
Star Wars fan growing up. I love Star Wars.
Pardon me?
Big Star Wars fan growing up. Oh yeah.
Huge Star Wars fan still to this day. Actually, on the quarantine, we watched movies
that's
in
a good idea.
Sequential order. Yeah, going through. So
that's a good idea to keep track of them, because it can be tough to keep track of what comes after what, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, I grew up. I mean, Return of the Jedi was my favorite movie until let's see, Return of the Jedi. I liked what was it? Braveheart was amazing, of course. Robin Hood, right? The original Robin Hood.
We have similar taste. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Those amazing movies, right? So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And so you were talking about all that traveling too. That alone, people don't realize this, but when you are flying on a plane, you're getting a level of radiation. And so if you're flying that often, that's also a cancer risk factor, believe it or not.
What is it about travel? What is it about being in the air that increases the radiation so much? I don't understand.
Well, there's a higher level of radiation that you're being exposed to when you go up in altitude like that, right? Just being up in altitude like that,
I see.
You're getting a higher level of it. Plus, like you were talking about, it's harder to eat right. So you're getting, you're drinking out of plastic bottles and things like that. So you're getting phthalates and all kinds of stuff. So that's going to increase toxin exposure. So a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of occupational hazards to professions that force you to have to travel a lot, right? There's a lot more hazards. Pilots have higher rates of heart disease and cancer than, normal people their age, right? Partly because they're sitting for long periods of time, just like in one, the cockpit, really tight area. I think they're opening those up where they can kind of get up and stretch a little bit, but a lot of times they're just sitting. Plus, when you travel, I mean, just think about it. You're traveling to London. I mean, you're, other than like getting up to go to the bathroom, you're pretty sedentary for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just, all those things are hazards that can kind of build up over time. As far as like you were talking about your health history with getting that cancer, these are all factors, right? As a doctor, I'm always thinking through, okay, what are all these factors that are going into this? And that was a factor as well. So are you no longer doing that position with Entertainment Tonight?
Yeah. So now we've taken,
obviously with the quarantine.
Yeah, well, right now for sure. But yeah, it didn't really make sense. It was tough being full time at home and family, and then finishing up there and running to go do things for ET. Yeah. And truthfully, they needed someone that was going to be more committed to the show as well. And so we still keep in touch, and we kind of ended our relationship on a great, and I have a feeling at some point or other, in some capacity, I'll end up there at some point. But I really enjoyed everybody there working there. It was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the diet that you're following now. You said, obviously, once you dialed down the carbs, right? And this, I always tell people, there's kind of a bell curve. Some people do better with more plants. Some people do better with kind of a good mixture, a good balance of plants and animal products. And some people do a lot better with pretty much just mostly all animal products, right? And that carnivore diet has really picked up popularity. A lot of people are seeing really good results with that. And let's talk about how you made that switch.
Well, like you mentioned, I think it was after my surgery. It had to have been. Yeah. I tried to go a month vegan, like almost vegan, for sure plant-based, but almost full vegan as best I could. And I'm not knocking it all. And there were some benefits to it. I definitely had a couple benefits.
I got a little visitor here.
Oh, what a beauty. Oh my goodness. I missed that age. But for me,
You want to say hi to Cameron real quick? We're on our podcast.
Hi. Oh, hi, Angel.
Sorry.
Nice to see your face.
Good to see you too. Sorry to interrupt you guys.
Brief commercial interruption here on our podcast. Just my wife Angel here saying hi to Cameron and my kids coming in.
Beautiful. What a family. Hi, guys. Man, you guys have your hands full. I love it.
There's David.
I think I have my hands full with a couple of teenagers, but good for you.
Yeah, as you can see, everybody said good to see you. As you can see, yeah, I'll be doing podcasts, and from time to time they'll pop in, just kind of like this.
Best.
You know,
that's the best.
It's all good.
That's what it's all about.
That's right.
What it's all about.
That's right.
See you later.
Love you guys. Love you guys.
They said bye, and they said they love you guys.
Yeah, love you too. That's awesome. Plant place. So I went and it just didn't work for me digestion wise. I was very bloated, gassy, distended, and I thought it was going to kind of settle in. It just never did. And then after the holidays, I just made that strong shift, to your point. Really just reading about more about, I hate to do a plug, but reading more about your book, having the opportunity to read more detail. And of course, I was keto for, probably a year off and on, and really enjoying the benefits of it, but still, I'd say moderate carbohydrate keto. And when I really went almost zero carbs, like you say, almost eating just very good quality, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised animal products, and really minimizing the plants. Plants just don't seem to work well with me. I'm sure there's some that do better than others. I haven't quite experimented and figured out which ones do. I seem to feel like sweet potatoes, for instance, do quite well with me. But most of the other ones don't. Strawberries, I get away with strawberries. I have a few strawberries now and then. But I just feel amazing. I also, I try to limit my nuts and seeds, but I'll have macadamia nuts for whatever reason. They seem to be easier on my body than some of the other nuts and seeds. Pumpkin seeds too work pretty well too.
Yeah.
But since doing that, so what I'll do, like I say, is go 18 hours, including my sleep. And then I basically want to be you. I try to have my first meal around 1 o'clock every day. And I try to have, basically as much as I can eat, really, in the form of grass-fed, grass-finished meat products. That's probably like 80% or 85% of actual protein. And then I might have grass-fed cheese. I'll have pasture-raised eggs and make a little meal like that. And what else? And then I might have some macadamia nuts or some strawberries as a little bit of a dessert feel, but often not even need it. And some lemon juice sometimes. And obviously I'll also incorporate in the cooking process. Well, I'll have MCT oil, but in the cooking process, I'll have maybe some avocado oil, some coconut oil, sometimes some olive oil, of course, things like that. So not totally animal based, but largely. And like I say, I was telling you this earlier, but I almost feel like I'm taking some sort of steroid. Like I feel pumped. Like I can't imagine eating almost zero carb and feeling like I'll do a set of push-ups. So my daily routine workout wise is I do at least 100 push-ups. I do at least 100 squats, body weight squats or jump squats, which is body weight. I'll do some ab work, and then every other day I'll do some pull-ups. And I honestly have to do one set of something, and I feel like that feeling that you go to the gym where you've been working out for whatever reason, and maybe it's the production of human growth hormone. I don't know what the chemistry is. But man, it does not feel like I'm eating low carb. Like as far as the effect on my muscles and my strength, I feel pumped, which is very confusing to me in many ways.
Yeah, no, we were taught that we needed the carbs, right, to feel pumped. But your body now is very good at sparing glycogen or stored sugar in your muscle cells and driving water in there. And then you have the higher level of human growth hormone, right? Because you're fasting, you're spending a lot of time in ketosis. And because of that, when you do that, you're going to get a greater anabolic effect, right? Meaning that, in general, human growth hormone is going to help your body stimulate autophagy, right? When you're fasting, but it's almost like taking a slinky and cocking a slinky. So the slinky doesn't move until you take your hand off of it, right? But when you cock it, now you have all this potential energy in it that then explodes, right? Once you take your hand off of it and it jumps up to the next step. It's kind of the same thing when you are following some sort of, a low carb, when your body's in ketosis and you're doing intermittent fasting like that, you cock your slinky or your ability to build lean body tissue. And then when you start to do the training and then you follow that up with, good high quality food, high quality protein, now you get that extra level of strength and development, right? And that's basically what's happening.
Wow, that's a great analogy. And I never thought about it like that. It definitely feels like that. And sometimes it can be a little tricky to get started.
Yeah.
Not often, but sometimes it does. But man, once it kicks in, it's like I can't stop. Like it's such a wild, like there's definitely something like that happening in my body during the workouts, that fight or flight, the human growth. Like all of a sudden I'll just be like, here we go. Let's keep going. Like it's an amazing difference. It really is.
Yeah. And now your body's very metabolically flexible also, where when you're at rest, it's very good at burning fat for fuel. But then when you get started with exercise, because when you're working out intensely, you can't produce enough energy from fat because you need oxygen for fat. So when you're breathing hard and breathing heavy, you need to burn sugar during that period of time. Your body's very good at switching from burning fat to now burning sugar when you're in that period where you're exercising. And then when you're finished, going back to burning fat for fuel. And
so
that's
where does it
really
get
a
the
hallmark
sugar from? How does the sugar come about?
So the sugar, your body stores sugar in your liver and in your muscles. Okay. It's going to store something around, 400 grams actually of sugar right in those areas, almost a day's worth of sugar in your muscles and in your liver. Now, if you're on a ketogenic diet, sometimes that will be a little bit less because your body says, I don't need quite as much sugar storage because it's good at burning fat between meals. But you have a lot of sugar storage in your muscles and your liver. And the reason why the body does that is for a time of famine, you need to be able to, like our ancestors, sometimes would go days without food because they didn't kill anything, right? Or they couldn't find any food. They couldn't get weak and lazy, right? Like in order to kill an animal, right? Which, neither of us, I don't know if you've had that opportunity. I never have, right? But I would imagine in the wild, right? You need a lot of energy, right? To be able to track something down and whatnot. You need your sympathetic nervous system elevated. Your heart rate goes up, right? Hunters will talk about, their heart rate goes up, all this kind of stuff when they're getting ready to kill something. So it's kind of the same thing. You need to be able to have fight or flight, right? Even in a fasted state. Or let's say you're fasting and, a predator's chasing you or whatever it was that our ancestors had to deal with. Our body is really good at conserving that stored sugar. It wants to keep it in there for survival, for something related to survival. Now, when we start doing push-ups and pull-ups, the body doesn't really know if we are running away from a predator, trying to climb a tree or something like that, or we're just exercising because we want to be fit. The body doesn't know the difference. It just knows, hey, I've got a demand here that I need to address. And then if we're doing that on a regular basis, the body says, I've got to adapt so I need to be stronger, faster, quicker, right? Because for whatever reason, I'm facing these, sort of scenarios where I've got to be able to perform at this high level. And so it adapts to that. And so you get really good at storing that sugar and only using it when you, when you need it, when you turn on.
How does the body store sugar when I'm not really eating any sugar?
Yeah. So even from fat. So when we look at fat, you have something your body creates called a triglyceride. The backbone of that is glycerol, right? And so it can take glycerol and convert it actually into glucose or stored sugar glycogen, right? So the body has all these built-in mechanisms. Even if you're on 100% fat diet, right? Which of course you're not, it can do that. Now it can also take protein and turn it into sugar as well, called gluconeogenesis, where you take protein, amino acids, turn that into glucose as well. So, if you're on this sort of diet, your body is going to create the amount of sugar that it needs. and nothing more, you know? And that's one of the things when we're on a higher carb diet, too much sugar is toxic. So the body tries to drive it into the cells and use it for energy. When you're on a very low carb diet, the body says, okay, well, I'm not really getting that much carbohydrate. So I'll actually make a little bit just so I have enough glucose, right? For those certain circumstances, which is more advantageous. And that's very anti-aging, just like you've been reading in my book, right? Reduces the aging effects, right? Reduces oxidation and rusting in our body and inflammation and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, really, really good. And then for some individuals, they do better on a higher protein diet. And so you're getting a higher amount of protein. And I actually do better on a higher protein diet too. I probably consume somewhere around a gram of protein per gram of body weight on a typical eating day, right? And you're probably doing something similar as well.
Yeah.
And that's also can be very conducive, especially keeping insulin down, but then also getting that protein, and making up the rest of the calories with the fat can be very conducive to healthy, lean body tissue development and good strength.
It's so great to know. I mean, yep. It's good to hear it, but then when you hear it and it's in line with one's experience, it's very reassuring and it's very like encouraging. So like, cause everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me, you know, because I'm listening to you, but also in my own experience. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, really good stuff. And we'll get ready to finish up here. But yeah, I know that in the beginning, when I first started working with you, we really focused on detoxification, right?
Yeah.
Some people are worried about that. Some people feel like you're going to have, you know, a bad experience, or they're going to, you know, sit on the toilet all day long. How was your experience as we started to add in some binders, some things to help support kidney and liver detoxification? What was your experience like with all of those?
Yeah, I feel, I mean, a lot of my experience with it is just a sense of peace of mind, knowing that I'm helping to kind of take some. I know my toxin levels were really quite high, so like when I take the activated charcoal in between meals, or when I take some of the binders, you know, it gives me a lot of peace of mind knowing. But as far as, you know, I'll go through bouts of having diarrhea and things like that, being on the toilet, but for me, it's usually related to like just having, from what I can tell anyway, having a meal with just way too much fat so that I can't quite handle it all. Yep. When I get that kind of more under control, I feel like everything works together like really well. I noticed that. So speaking of getting the toxins out, I'm assuming that part of the, you know, being high level toxins in my body, one of the side effects is like aches and pains. So that's something that I haven't talked about yet, but I definitely experienced knee aches, hip aches, lower back, hands. Those are the main ones, I think, unless I'm forgetting something. But the weird ones were really hips. Like I'd have really, really sore, my hip flexors would just get really, really sore very easily. And my knees too. Like, and that has definitely improved since taking some of those the binders and the detoxification. It hasn't gone away completely, but I'm, you know, being patient, and I'm also being realistic. But it's much better.
Yeah, that's huge. And chronic pain, chronic joint pain, especially when it's multiple joints, is a definite sign of inflammation just overall in the body. And a lot of times some level of silent autoimmunity, right? So a lot of times we have autoimmunity to our connective tissue. And when you're noticing joint pain in a lot of different joints, not just maybe like, you know, a previous injury that you had, but multiple different joints throughout the body, oftentimes it's a sign of an underlying kind of autoimmune style condition that's taking place. And toxins are known to really drive up autoimmunity in the body, right? Because the body says, hey, these unwanted toxins are in the system, and you know, we need to get rid of them, right? So it starts to try to ramp up the immune system to try to attack that. So I think all of that's going down, which is really improving. Plus the fact that you're getting less fermentation. And so one of the reasons why you've done so well on this sort of diet is your body, right? And I'm similar to this too. Our gastrointestinal system tends to over ferment a little bit, right? And everybody's a little bit different. And so meat is not as fermentable, right? and a lot of the high fiber types of foods and the higher FODMAP foods, which, are all healthy foods to a degree, like broccoli and cauliflower and things like that. But those can ferment. For some people, they're really healthy because they help support their great prebiotics, support the gut bacteria, a lot of good health benefits to them. But for other people, they can actually cause more inflammation in the system. And so for you, you've noticed big improvements, not utilizing a lot of those.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point too, to show that we're all so different in so many ways. I mean, one of the things that people love, and garlic and onions are, in many ways supposed to be so good for so many people. But for me and for my microbiome, I guess, they're one of the most. My bacteria loves it. They're like painful for my gut. Like I get so distended and start burping like crazy and whatever. And yet they're obviously very healthy for so many different people. So, but that's a great example. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, this is exactly bio-individual uniqueness in a sense, right? We're all bio-individual people, right? We have our own unique biology, right? And physiology. And so what's cool is that you've really found a diet approach that works great for you and that you're able to thrive off of and get all the benefits that you want and feel great. And like you said, you're not enslaved to constantly snacking, constantly eating, but you feel satiated throughout the day. You're able to have the lean body tissue that you want, the body type that you want, and the food tastes great. And I know you get a lot of your meat products from US Wellness Meats, which is a fantastic brand. We'll have a link below. You guys can check that out. But US Wellness Meats is one of those, they pretty much have like every kind of meat that you can imagine, like almost every cut. And it's all grass-fed, organic, and grass-finished, like you mentioned, where, with cattle, a lot of times they grain finish them. So they start them on grass and then they give them grains the last 90 days to make them fatter. But that reduces your healthy fatty acids, your omega-3s, reduces the amount of antioxidants that are in there. And, the meat is not quite as healthy. And so the good thing about US Wellness Meats is grass-fed, grass-finished. And what are some of your favorite things that you like to get from US Wellness?
I love their ribeyes, beef tenderloin, their New York strip. But, one of the things that I discovered on US Wellness Meats that I love is also they have, which is very tough to find, in my experience anyway, grass-fed Swiss cheese. So you can find grass-fed cheddar. I'm just a big fan of Swiss cheese. And so they have a really great grass-fed baby Swiss that's super, super yummy. They also have a great grass-fed butter that I can't remember the name of it, but it's I think it's the only one that they have on their website. I love that. I think it's from New Zealand. Super good. But as far as the meats go, I like to experiment. So even just recently we got a flank steak because Vanessa wants to make a flank steak. I got top sirloin. The ribeye is one of my favorites though. And I also love the balance between the protein and the fat in a good ribeye. So
yeah, ribeye is great because it's like a 1-to-1 fat to protein ratio, which because fat has 9 calories, protein has 4 calories per gram. It's roughly something along the lines of like 60 to 65% of the calories coming from fat, 35 to 40% coming from protein, right? If you cook it in, some sort of a healthy fat at the bottom, you might even get a little bit more fat. And that's a great ratio to have. Ribeyes they taste amazing as well. And then you're also a fan of the Paleo Valley beef sticks, right?
Yeah, Paleo Valley beef sticks, the Paleo Valley powdered bone broth, the beef bone broth, the grass-fed, grass-finished.
The bone broth,
That's really, that just is incredibly rich. You almost taste the collagen or the gelatin in there, which I really appreciate. And then what else do I get from Paleo Valley? So
organ complex.
Oh, the organ. That's right. So I have a little trouble with the organ meats. I'm not gonna lie. Like eating like I do, I'm trying to get as many vitamins and minerals from the great quality of food products. But I just feel better having some organ meats in there. I just can't quite. Just doesn't go with my palate. So the Paleo Valley, I do their organ complex. Is that what it is?
Yeah, their organ complex. It's like a liver,
I take 2 of those with every meal.
Yep, which is really good. We just recently had beef liver, and actually the way my mom actually had prepared it, and she did a great job on it, believe it or not. But yeah, liver is so gamey, right? It really, you really need to marinate it. And there's kind of an art to cooking it because it's very, very gamey. And I mean, you compare that to a ribeye and the flavor of the ribeye, it's like, why would you ever want to eat the liver?
Yeah.
But the nutrients are so good, right? The mitochondrial support nutrients that are in there. And that's why I told you the organ complex is great because it really balances it out. So we're getting a lot of our amino acids from muscle meat. We want to balance it out with the kind of amino acids we get from cartilage, like bone broth, for example, or collagen protein, and then also the nutrients that we get from the organs. And this is really how our ancestors did it. They would eat the entire animal. They cook the bones, all that kind of stuff. They wouldn't just eat the ribeye and that's it, right? So this is more ancestral, and that's kind of, what we focus on here on the podcast is ancestral health, and that's what you're doing as far as getting all those things. So really good stuff. And we're a huge fan of Paleo Valley. They're a sponsor of our podcast here. So we love the folks over there at Paleo Valley, really high quality stuff, and US Wellness Meats as well, really high quality stuff. And that's key also. Remember we talked about with Cameron about his toxic load, right? He had a really high toxic load, and that was a definite contributing factor to him developing cancer, right? Healthy people in general don't develop cancer. So he looked healthy on the outside, but on the inside, he had a high toxic load. And so by consuming grass-fed, grass-finished products, those animal products are very low. They have very low toxic loads. And so he's consuming foods. And that's one of the big keys when it comes to reducing our toxic load is to not consume as much, right? Breathe cleaner air, drink cleaner water, eat cleaner food. And so he's doing that obviously with the grass-fed, grass-finished animal products. And I know you also implemented the hydrogen water as well, right? So you got the hydrogen water in your house.
We have the hydrogen water filter on our water filter in probably the last 4 or 5 months. So from what I understand, that also will help with the detoxification. Is that correct?
Yes, helps with detoxification. And molecular hydrogen actually is really powerful for reducing oxidative stress in the body. And oxidative stress is basically what toxins will cause. So it's helping neutralize damage that can be done by toxins that are in our system, right? So absolutely. And then water in general. Just hydrating your body well is one of the best ways. I mean, it's a necessary way. You can't detox without hydrating your body well. So so that's really important. And then when you but if you get like a reverse osmosis or just some sort of good water filter, Berkey water filters, that's going to help you detox. The benefit of the hydrogen is its effect on the oxidative stress level. So that really lowers oxidative stress. And at the deep cellular level, increased oxidative stress is what accelerates the aging process, increases pain, like you were talking about in our body, and is a major factor when it comes to increasing cancer growth in the system. So,
wow. Well, there you go. So I'm glad that I've got that going. Yes. You also, when you came over that day after my surgery, you also, I think I wonder if after being on the studio, so I work in entertainment, I've got an EMF mic pack on my body every day. We're surrounded by satellite dishes and things. That's my world that I work in. Then you came in where I live here in Altadena, and there's telephone. I mean, you're in LA. You're in a big city, and I'm sure people can relate to it everywhere with Wi-Fi and 5G and everything else around. And you helped me understand the toxicity of the EMF pollution. Yes. And the key products, the QI products that you encouraged me to get. And I've got the big one for the house. Yep. I've got a little tower for work. And then I've got the little individual ones that I keep on me just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Electromagnetic frequencies are basically a stressor on our body that's there all the time. So our body is used to certain electromagnetic frequencies, such as the earth. I mean, you think about you live in LA. So if you were to go to the beach and walk on the beach, you're getting a very healthy electromagnetic frequency. It's one of the reasons why people feel so good after a beach walk is they neutralize their electromagnetic frequency. And we can do that by grounding, by going out bare feet, or, like rubber soles block the earth's natural electromagnetic frequency. But the earth's electromagnetic frequency is very healing and supportive for our body. So going out barefoot on your grass, dirt, sand, different things like that, very healthy and healing for the body. Our ancestors were in touch with the electromagnetic frequency of the earth, since the beginning of mankind. So we've adapted to it. All the EMFs that are coming from satellites, our cell phones, all these types of things are very new, right? We haven't had a chance. It takes a long time for us as a species to adapt to these sort of stressors. So the chronic exposure can cause a lot of different issues and cause an increase in oxidative stress. And, it's not something we can necessarily escape from completely. However, there are devices like the Key device, which releases charged water molecules. You can't actually see them, but it releases charged water molecules. And they've had some different studies that have shown that it dramatically reduces the electromagnetic stress that somebody is under, and improves their sympathetic to parasympathetic balance, or what we call their heart rate variability, right? So heart rate variability is actually the beat to beat variability between our heartbeats. So we should have like a staggered rhythm in our heart. So even though it might be like 60 beats per minute, the actual time between each beat should actually be alternating. Okay. Like it shouldn't be a monotone. And that's a sign of good parasympathetic tone. If we're in sympathetic dominance or fight or flight, we can't heal. We actually want to have what we call good parasympathetic tone. So the Key device, by releasing this charged water, it almost acts like a protective blanket over your home, right? So the device you have is I think it's like 3,000 square feet. I can't remember exactly how much it covers, but it's like a protective blanket. So your whole family is benefiting from that. And the EMFs that you're being exposed to, like I got my cell phone right here, we've got towers all around us and things like that. It's all being neutralized, right? So your whole family benefits from that. And, that's a huge thing when it comes to chronic disease, is the chronic exposures, right? Like where are we spending the most amount of our time? That's where we should be focused on trying to reduce our EMF exposure. And that's what you've done with your home as well. And great company. We'll link to them, Synergy Science. They provide the hydrogen water as well as the Key device that Cameron's using as well. So really good stuff. Well, Cameron, this has been a fantastic interview. Really have enjoyed it. Any last words of inspiration for our audience?
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the podcast. I've enjoyed it as well. I guess I would just say, I guess it's sort of how I've been kind of rolling the last several years, and how it in many ways has helped me tremendously. And that is just to be your best advocate for your own health, to really pay attention to your body, listen to it. You know when you eat something and it has a certain reaction, it means something. It's trying to tell you something. I remember just ignoring all these signs and symptoms for so long. And then when I started to pay attention, I feel like a different person. So I guess I'll just end with that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so, Cameron, the best place for our audience to reach you, probably your Instagram, right? Cameron Mathison on Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram at Cameron Mathison is the best place.
Definitely.
Or on Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, and the Hallmark Channel, of course. Yep. So definitely check him out. Hallmark Channel, Home and Family, really, really great show. Check that out for sure. Follow him on Instagram as well. He's always posting things with his family, different things he's doing on the set, and golfing adventures and skiing, snowboarding adventures as well, right? That's right. So you get a chance.
We'll get back to that eventually. Someday.
That's right. Exactly. Once we're out of this quarantine, you got it. Absolutely. Well, so go ahead and check out Cameron, guys. And remember, you're more valuable than you think you are. So start taking action to improve your health and allow your body to do what it was created to do, which is heal and repair and allow you to thrive. We'll see you guys on a future podcast. Be blessed.